Hello and welcome to this week's live chat, Lunch and Learn. And this week we are going to discuss orders from the court and other investigations. And you'll see from your chapter reading also malpractice. But I want you to understand that most people discuss malpractice and think only about physicians doing something wrong. But that is not true. The term malpractice legally means a professional not doing their job properly, legally, accurately. And this includes medical coding specialists. And for us, instead of the term malpractice, they will use the term fraud. So we're going to discuss all of that today. Starting with orders from the courts that often are the responsibility of the health information management professionals to address, to fulfill, to comply with, okay? A subpoena is an order from a court for information. Most often, a subpoena will want the individual being subpoenaed to appear in court to share that information. More often in the Health Information Management Department, we will see a subpoena ducis tecum, and that is a court summons ordering the sharing, delivery of specific relevant documents to whatever matter the court is attending to. And it might be a malpractice lawsuit against a physician. It might be malpractice against a hospital or a doctor's office or any number of things. But that is why this subpoena ducis tecum is mostly lands in the Health Information Management Department, because we are in charge of all the health information and the claims, which is health information, and the coding and the interpretation of the physician's documentation. And that is very often offered as evidence in lots of different types of lawsuits, including injury lawsuits, okay? So these are things that may come across your desk once you are in the field, in your job, okay? And if you are directly given the subpoena, I recommend that you speak with the attorney for the facility for which you're working. Generally, you're not in this all by yourself alone, okay? All right. All right, so coding malpractice is fraud, and this is the instance of doing things that are against the law for multiple different reasons when you know better, because you're here in school learning better, okay? But sometimes it can be difficult to meet with intimidation that is thrown at us from a supervisor, from a physician, from somebody who is in charge of whether we have a job or not, and what kind of recommendation we might get or not, okay? It's very scary, and no matter how strong you are, dealing with intimidation and fighting back against it is challenging, okay? And you may also find that this is being thrust upon you out of ignorance. For example, I work with some physicians who will code themselves because they know the code, all right? but maybe the code has changed, or maybe the documentation doesn't match the code the doctor chose. It can be intimidating to go back and explain to them that this is a misrepresentation of services by reporting incorrect codes that do not match what the documentation says. You can use your query for this. This is not something you have to have face to face. However, there are two aspects to this. There are the moral aspects of doing what is right, period. Just doing what is right. Okay. There are the aspects of lying to an insurance company, or if the third party payer is Medicare, Medicaid, or TRICARE, lying to the federal government. And this is covered in the False Claims Act. And you know, every state has a False Claims Act, which says those who know or should know the codes are incorrect. And I got to tell you, you can't defend against that, because you either know that they're incorrect, or you should know because you are an educated and hopefully certified medical coding professional. Now, billing for services not rendered can be a little gray area, if you will, because generally speaking, coders are not there when any services are rendered. We're not in the operating room. We're not in the little exam room at the doctor's office or the clinic. So we don't really know what was rendered and what was not rendered. We must, though, go by what is documented. And that way, if the documentation states services were rendered, then you have physical, tangible proof that you did not break the law, that it was whomever created that documentation. Okay. However, sometimes you get an inkling. All right. And what I mean by that is, if it is a physician's office, you probably have access to the appointment calendar. So if you see paperwork come through that said this patient was given a nebulizer treatment, okay, on this particular date, and then you look in the appointment calendar and you see that that patient never came in that day, that tells you that you're being asked to bill for services that were not rendered because the patient wasn't there. Okay, altering claim forms for higher payments. And this goes back to, remember when we talked about legal queries where you're not allowed to tell them the answer, because the answer that you assume or the answer that you direct them to may be the higher paying code, even though you may not know that, okay? But the fact is that's the way that the lawyers are going to look at it. And how are you going to defend against that? Falsification of information in medical record documents. You know that this is not permitted. These are legal documents. And you must make sure that everything, to the best of your knowledge, is kosher, okay? And think of it like this. Would you want somebody putting false information into your medical record when you are the patient? Do you know what could happen? You could be given wrong information wrong medication. You could be given a wrong therapy. This is not a place to mess around. And please, please, please remember, what we do in healthcare is not about money first. There's plenty of money to be made in healthcare. doing it the right way. Okay, billing for services that were not performed or misrepresenting the types of services that were performed. This is maybe I don't want to say common, but it's known as upcoding, which you may have read about, which means that you are billing for extras that were not provided. Okay, again, you got to tell the truth. This is your number one responsibility, accuracy. You got to tell the truth. If somebody is trying to force you into not telling the truth, wink, wink, we do this all the time. Oh, you're just new. Oh, you know, that to me is brush up your resume time and go find another job. Or call the Key Tam lawsuit, the hotline, and tell somebody that this is happening. Be the whistleblower. You're protected under federal law and state law. Okay, but don't let this happen. You know, when people talk about how horrible healthcare is in the United States, this is part of it. You don't want to be a part of the dirty part of healthcare. You want to go out, take this education, and use it to make things better. That's why I teach. Because I got 20 of you that are going to go out there and make things better in your own little corner of the world. Okay, billing for supplies not provided and providing medical services that are unnecessary based on the patient's condition. And this is why we made you take anatomy, physiology, and medical terminology and learn about medical necessity. The diagnosis code or codes must identify medical necessity for whatever services, treatments, and procedures were provided. And you have Google, you can find out. But that's better than getting yourself, you know, taken off to prison. I personally don't want to. And just so you know, Central Carolina does not have a bail bonds fund for alumni. So you're going to be on your own. All right. So you're going to read professional liability and malpractice in chapter 5 this week. And you're going to find that a lot of, or some of this chapter does not really relate to you as a medical coding professional. But I want you to be certain to learn about the False Claims Act. This is directly in your lap. Those who know or should know there is false information on a claim form. Bye-bye, you're going to federal or state prison. That's it. And you also know that a physician or a practice manager or anybody of authority over you job-wise who is encouraging you to do something that you know is fraudulent is not a stand-up person. They're not going to stand up in court and say, oh, Your Honor, no. She or he, our medical coder, totally innocent. I blackmailed her. I coerced her, or him. I forced him or her to put that wrong information on the claim. No, they're not. They're going to say, we hired our medical coding specialist because they're the specialist. They're the subject matter expert. They're the experts in this. What do we know about coding? I never learned about coding. You know, that's what they're going to say. So protect yourself, protect your patients. All right. After reading chapter 5, do the homework. Okay. And then after the homework, you're going to take the quiz. You know how it is. We got this going on already. We've been doing this for a while. So weekly additional stuff. I gave you handouts on healthcare fraud and abuse cases. so you can see that we're not making a mountain out of a molehill. You know, the fact is that the federal government makes millions and millions and millions of dollars. I shouldn't say makes millions, gets back millions and millions and millions of dollars, plus fines and penalties. And it's very lucrative, okay? I think I read for every dollar that they recoup from fraud, they get back $5. So that's a really good return on the efforts it takes to hunt down and prosecute people who conduct fraud in healthcare. Okay. And then also a handout on court orders and subpoenas for medical records. We discussed that in the beginning here, but you should be familiar. Just, you know, you're not going to law school, but just familiar enough so that the name, you know, you're familiar with what the word means or the term or the phrase. Okay. All right. So this is what you know. What you know is what you're going to learn. And if you have any questions or comments, you want to discuss something back and forth, email me. I will email you back within 24 hours and we can set up an appointment to speak on the phone. We can Zoom, we can FaceTime, we can do whatever you like. Okay. I'm very flexible, but ask. Don't sit there and say, well, I don't know what that is. I'll find out later, because later never comes. Okay. I am here for you now, 7 days a week. Hit me up when you have a question, okay? I want to see you succeed.